This is Jeff again. Another project. Have an Onan 4000 Microquiet, and it is a K series, which means it's smog compliant. You can tell the smog compliant by the altitude adjustment on the carburetor right here. And they're a unique beast when you get inside of them. And I'm going to take a quick video of it starting just so you can see this. Disclaimers before we start. This is not the recommended method for fixing the carburetor. They don't make a repair kit for them anymore. They don't even sell parts for them. So if you destroy any parts during this video, be ready to buy a carburetor between $300 and $450 depending on where you look. Before you start, remember you're going to be messing with gasoline and you're going to be messing with electricity. So make sure you unhook the 12-volt side of it because you're going to be working directly above the start and prime switch, which is hooked to 12 the fuel volts. Line. Open this drain valve. Notice the fuel is dripping out of the hose, and the fuel is going to drain into the bottom of the generator. Before we remove the splash tray below, let's go ahead and remove the fuel line from the carburetor. I've seen these wired a couple different ways, but usually the ground wire is landed on one of the screws. That has to be on the metal side, remember when you put that back on. And then the hot lead plugs into an impossible to hold on to wire behind it. Trick number one, what I'm going to do is hold the back wire with a needle nose while I'm pulling on the front wire so that I'm pulling on the solderless connectors alone. Do not pull on the wires or you will pull them apart. Okay, I held the hot wire connector with a needle nose and I disconnected the hot wire. I also disconnected the ground wire from the block for the solenoid. Okay, now that we have our fuel hose off and our carburetor drained, I took the screws out of the splash tray and I'm going to pull it out. There's a picture of the splash tray with the two screws. There's a picture where the splash tray used to be in the bottom of the carburetor. What we're going to do is remove the bowl by taking off the solenoid. Next step is to take a 3/4 inch box wrench and remove the solenoid. It doesn't look like it will fit, but if you unhook the wires, put them through the box end wrench, the box end wrench will go over the solenoid on the bottom. This is where we hope that the whole piece comes out of the bottom of the carburetor rather than just the solenoid. Okay, we got lucky and the solenoid broke loose and it took the retainer nut with it. So I'm going to slide the box end wrench off because if you screw the solenoid out more than about 1/4 of a turn, you won't be able to get the wrench off the bottom of it and it will be in the way in the next step. Now what we're going to do, you can see I passed the wires behind the electrical switch by pulling it out on the end where I removed the ground screw. We're doing that because we need to screw this solenoid out and there's not enough wire to wind up. And if you break the solenoid off on the bottom, that's an expensive piece. So what I did was screwed the solenoid and the main jet out of the bottom of the carburetor. And you'll notice the float and float mechanism stays attached to the motor. You could work on the float needle and seat while it's in there if you need to. What we're going to be working on is the altitude adjustment. See the altitude adjustment now, the knob is laying on the right hand side in this picture. And the way the fuel is metered is the tapered end of that needle acts as the jet that meters fuel into the main, which is coming up through the center of the carburetor that feeds the motor. So the jet feeds the solenoid chamber. The solenoid chamber feeds the main jet, which is in the center. But no metering occurs in the main jet. The metering occurs on the side where the taper goes into the seat. That's what makes this carburetor so difficult to clean. I now have the parts out. A couple of things to note before you start cleaning. There's a solenoid on the bottom, then an aluminum washer, then the retainer main jet, whatever you want to call it, that goes on the bottom of the carburetor. There's a copper gasket on the top of that, on the side, that seals to the bottom of the bowl. That gaskets need to be, those copper gasket and the aluminum gasket need to be in exactly that order. And you'll notice inside of the bowl there's an aluminum gasket that also needs to be in that place. And you can't dip this because the assembly is staked together at the end of that, so it has plastic parts on it. In order to clean the main jet, you're going to need to remove the solenoid from the main jet. Do that by taking a 3/4, holding the solenoid, and taking a 11/16 wrench and loosening the main jet from the solenoid. This is what it looks like when the solenoid is separated from the main jet. This should move freely in and out. The spring should return it to its normal position. That slides up inside the body and closes the fuel off. A bread tie is plenty small to get through these. You know, most of the bag type twist ties. This is a little more difficult. And what we're looking at here is the tapered piece that goes into the body. So there's no way to clean this other than just take a decent grade carburetor cleaner and back the nut out to lowest altitude, which is the furthest out, and just start spraying, clean, spray, clean, spray, clean. Because there's really no way to remove this or get at it. Not that I've found. If you find one, please post carburetor in the opposite direction. That metering, it's difficult to see here, that metering needle goes to this hole that feeds the main jet. So if you take your carb cleaner, spray in that hole, it will come out the top. Now, be aware, put your glasses on. This is the perfect perfect way to spray a carburetor cleaner in your eye. Don't ask me how I know that. A couple more tricks I've learned over the years of working on these beautiful Onan generators is, if you snug these two parts together before you put them back in, you can depend on them to come back out just like I showed. If you don't get it out, what you can do is take the solenoid out just like I demonstrated, and then you can go in with the socket below the fuel drain petcock, and you can remove this piece from the carburetor. If you snug these two together, remember there's an aluminum washer in between them. So if you snug those two together, next time when you grab it with the 3/4 wrench, the main jet will come out with the solenoid. We're ready to go back together. We'll give it a shot, and if it's not clean enough, we get to do it again. You can see I have the bowl on there loose with the solenoid just started, and I ran the wires back down behind here by slipping them in behind that little tab. That's so the wires can rotate and we don't break them off of that expensive solenoid. Run it in by hand first, make sure you don't cross thread it. Once you have the solenoid snugged up by hand, slip the 3/4 wrench over the wires and use the box end to snug the bottom of it. Do not over tighten, and notice how the altitude adjustment is pointed straight out. Make sure the washer didn't fall out from the body above it. It should be a paper gasket, and it should still be stuck in the groove. Don't dig in there, try to clean it, or you will tear the gasket in there. Not available. Okay, went and got a flashlight so you can see that I've reconnected the electrical wire. Once again, that's an impossibly short wire in the back usually. So I take a needle nose and hold that while I plug the red wire back into the red wire. That's the power wire. And then reconnect the ground to the screw. Make sure that it's on the casting side, not on the outside, the painted side. It needs to go against there so it's grounded well. I'm at about sea level, so I set the altitude at 0. A little rich won't hurt it. The plugs come out white. Okay, you can see that I've reinstalled the splash tray. That's a T30 Torx. I took my 3/4 box end, tightened the solenoid into the bottom to retain the bowl on the carburetor, and reconnected the fuel line. I'm going to connect the power, and we'll do a test run. Remember, during the prime, you'll want to check for fuel leaks. Make sure the bowl is not running over. Make sure there's no fuel dripping out anywhere before you try to start.